Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our broadcast on natural capital. My name's Dan Kraus. I'm a conservation scientist with the Nature Conservancy of Canada.
And I'm Brian DePratto, an economist with TD Bank.
And I guess we're here today to talk about our report on natural capital. Brian, I guess this project really kind of started about 5 years ago when the Nature Conservancy of Canada and TD Bank got together to identify and protect important forests across Canada. And as part of the project, we started to look at what are some of the natural capital values that these forests are providing. And for me, one of the really interesting things about the project has been that these forests are really important for nature, but we're also finding that they're quite important for people as well. And that the forests we protect through the support of TD Bank and through our other donors across the country are really providing important services for communities.
Absolutely. This is an area that's sort of I've come into recently, and it's been totally fascinating to learn about, not just the benefits I'm used to as someone who enjoys being outdoors, enjoys going to these types of locations, but the broader benefit they provide, to society, to business, to local communities. It's been a really fascinating research agenda for us.
Yeah. So when I talk to people, one of the first questions they ask me is, well, what is natural capital? How would you define it?
To be technical, because I'm an economist,
yeah.
It's a way of capturing what we call externalities. And a traditional way to think about an externality, you think about a factory, right? Maybe it's spewing out smoke, something like that, and that's not priced. So factories, they don't necessarily care, at least traditionally they didn't care about that, and we call that a negative externality, because everyone around that breathes in that smoke, and it's not good for anybody.
Right.
Well, what forests are, they're a positive externality. So these forests are absorbing carbon, they're reducing atmospheric pollutants, they're potentially purifying water, and so they have all these extra benefits that traditionally haven't been priced. So where natural capital comes in is notion of, well, let's take these benefits and let's actually put a value on them. Let's start defining just what kind of value they're delivering to forests, and let's start talking about that in decision making. Let's make smarter decisions that recognize all the benefits that forests provide. And natural capital provides that way of bring that into the boardroom discussion.
That's great. For me, I think the report, one of the important things has been that it's kind of brought our worlds together. Economy and ecology, they share a common root, right? Which really it means house, and it's looking after the house. And it seems to be that the concept of natural capital can maybe help us to sort of bring that together a little bit. I've been an ecologist for over 25 years now, and what I'm a little worried about is, despite the fact that we're doing some great conservation across the country and around the world, we're still seeing the decline of species and habitats. And it makes me think that we need to do more protected areas and we need to help endangered species, but we need to do something different. And maybe this, having an economist and ecologist in a room talking to each other, and is maybe a first step in just trying to change the way that we try to value nature around us. Now that we're done the report, who do you think is going to use this, and how's it going to help?
I really think almost everyone can use it. I think you made a great point about looking at conservation and preservation, and I think it's safe to say in boardrooms, in mayoral offices, where the decision makers sit, they haven't necessarily been thinking about the benefit and the value of land in a broader scope than sort of here's a spot where we could maybe expand the city, or here's a spot where we could build a new facility. And so what this report really helps people do is realize, well, maybe we need to be thinking about this in a different way. Maybe we need to be thinking about not just the value of what this new project might be, but what are the values that we might be losing if we go ahead with these projects. And so is there a smarter, better way to do the project that takes the values and the benefits that nature provides and incorporates them in a smarter, more holistic way? So we've been looking at this for a while and reading about it. Have you seen a lot of work in different places outside of Canada or otherwise on natural capital?
The one place where I was first introduced to the concept of natural capital was around New York City. So a lot of people may not know, but New York City gets its water from a watershed that's kind of upstream. And years ago, New York City was faced with a problem that they had to filter their water. And they had two choices. They could either go the traditional way of building a filtration plant to take out pollutants and sediments from the water, and that was going to cost about $6 billion. So big project, right? It's New York City, right? They need a lot of water. But the other option was to protect and restore the watershed where that water is coming from. And they decided to go with that option of, instead of investing in the engineering infrastructure, to invest in natural capital and to invest in that upstream watershed. And by protecting forests and restoring buffers along creeks and rivers, they're able to keep a lot of sediments outside of the, it doesn't flow into the water, so they're able to, they don't need to filter it. And that investment in natural capital ended up saving them. It cost like less than half of what the engineering solution would provide. And then, of course, there's all these other benefits that you don't get from a water filtration plant. You get recreational opportunities, and you get protecting habitat for rare species. So I think that's a really interesting example, and one that really stuck with me. So that's from the States. Are you seeing the concept of natural capital being used more in Canada?
More and more. I think it's still early days here, but there's a lot of there's a lot of exciting initiatives. There's some global ones, but really within Canada, there's this new initiative called the Natural Capital Lab. And what that's really trying to do is bring together a lot of the decision makers in Canada and really just sort of promote and explain. I think a lot of people may not be aware of natural capital and may not know these benefits. So basically getting people together to explore ways that, again, I keep saying the same thing, but just make smarter decisions, take nature into account when they're making their decisions here. And I think that's a really exciting development.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, and to go back to the report, I think you touched on this a little bit, but one thing that was kind of interesting to me, when we go through the benefits, I noticed a lot of the areas with wetlands tended to have a much larger natural capital value. Is that tied into the water story?
Yeah, a little bit. Part of the reason why wetlands had such a high value, these forested wetlands, we sometimes call them swamps or sort of muskeg forests, it's because they're storing water, and one of the natural capital benefits that we learned about was that these forests can actually store floodwaters and prevent flooding downstream. The other thing is that forested wetlands tend to accumulate a lot of carbon, and that's mainly in what's sometimes called peat. So in a wet forest, when leaves and twigs are falling, they tend not to decompose as quickly because they're covered with water. It's a lower oxygen environment, and that accumulates carbon. And I mean, we found in the one case study, the Curran property in Manitoba, which is a muskeg forest, it has like $26,000 of natural capital values per hectare per year, and a lot of that is with that carbon that's stored within the peat. Just one more thing about carbon and peat is in terms of climate change, I mean, that's one thing where Canada really kind of can play a global leadership role, is that in our northern forests, these wet forests store a huge amount of carbon. And one thing that we can do to help to regulate the global climate and try to reduce climate change is keep that carbon locked up in those northern forests. So one thing in the report, as I mentioned, the Curran property in Manitoba has natural capital values of about $26,000 per year. How exactly do you put that number value? How did you come up with those numbers, Brian?
Well, it's something we call defensive expenditures, and that sounds like again a technical term. Basically, it goes back to what you just said. The importance of locking up that carbon.
Right.
We know that carbon and other pollutants have these have negative impacts. I'll focus on carbon because I think it's the easiest one to explain. So, when we're locking up that carbon in these properties, in Canadian forests in general, what that means is that we're reducing the future impact of climate change. And what economists have done is basically gone and modeled out, well, let's see what happens, what might happen, under different climate change scenarios. What's the impact on output? And, it's negative. Obviously, climate change has a huge negative impact on societies, on economies. And so what you can do is you can actually put a price on that. You can say, well, here's how much less activity we're going to have. Here's sort of how bad it's going to be. And so you take that backwards and you say, okay, well, how do we avoid that? How can we defend against that? And if you take that value and say, well, if we're going to reduce that by 1 ton of carbon, let's say, or 1 kilogram of phosphorus in the water, how much are we going to save down the road by not having to deal with that then? So you get that value, and that's really, you tie that back in, and that's where you get that value. So it's sort of, protecting the future and putting a price on that.
Okay.
Yeah, what's interesting though, we focused on a lot of the carbon, a lot of the water,
right.
But I think there's, a huge realm of other benefits that these forests provide. You're an ecologist. What are some other benefits?
Yeah, you know, a lot of these forests, when we started our partnership with TD Bank Group to protect these forests across Canada, we identified them and we protected them for their biodiversity values. And for me as an ecologist, I mean, that's enough, right? That's enough to protect these sites for their intrinsic value. So some of the sites, they range from the Tuscan property in Atlantic Canada, which had rare old growth Acadian forests. We have the Bacchus Woods property in Ontario, the Smith property, which was secured with TD, which has like one of the highest densities of nationally rare species in Canada. It's a really important site. And then we had properties out west with, you know, some of these big classic West Coast old growth forests. So, you know, for me, there's important biodiversity values that are worth protecting because of their intrinsic values, to try to protect those species and habitats for future generations. And you know, I think one of the great things about the report is that we're protecting these properties. It's great for nature, but it's also, we're finding these properties are really important for people as well, and for our well-being and for our local economies.
So you'd say it's safe to say that you know, the figures we've come up with, they're definitely just the tip of the iceberg.
You know, that they are, because you know, I think that as we're working through the report, we found that there were some things that we can't value and we can't put a dollar value on. So yeah, I think in the report, you know, we had some properties that were $40,000 per hectare per year in terms of the services. We have to recognize that that is really the minimum value that
Absolutely.
they are providing. Yeah. I think we may have some questions that are coming through. It looks like we have one from, I'm just looking at our screen here, Darlana D. And Brian, maybe this is a good one for you. Do trees in my city, which is Toronto, provide these services too?
I'm happy to answer that one. We've actually looked at this in an earlier report from TD Economics, taking natural capital, looking at the more urban setting, and absolutely they do. You know, there's the clean air benefits, things like that, but I think there's also a lot more benefits that are more direct to people living in cities. You know, having an urban forest around you, you think about having a tree near your house.
Right.
Well, in the summer, you know, that's providing shade to your house. And in the winter, that's potentially a windbreak. So you're saving on your heating and cooling costs as well. You know, reducing the amount of water coming into the sewers. You know, the root systems. Shouldn't try to explain that to an ecologist.
It's called transpiration, Brian.
Transpiration. There we are.
Okay.
You know, that's slowing how much is going into the sewers, so it makes it more. You know, reduces the cost for the city because you're not getting those big strains on the sewer system. So, you know, absolutely we see a lot of these benefits in the urban setting, and a lot of different benefits maybe than what we talked about in this report.
Right.
I've seen another one here from Ashley R. Maybe you're better placed here. She's asking, can the public visit any of the places that are mentioned in the report?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think we had 11 case studies that we looked at across Canada, which covered all of Canada's 8 forest regions. And several of them have trails and are open to the public. And yeah, I'm sure people aren't kind of going there to sort of experience the natural capital values of the forest, but I mean, they're great places to visit. I mentioned Bacchus Woods in southern Ontario, has wonderful trails that are going through it, and it's one of the best examples of old growth forests in southern Ontario, and a great place for people to visit. And if people do want to learn more, they can go to our website and see some of the properties that they can access. So
that's great.
I think maybe we should go sometime.
Absolutely, love to.
I think we'll wrap it up. Looks like if there's some other comments that are coming in, what we can do is we'll answer them in the comment box and get back to people about those. If people do want to find out a little bit more about the report, they can access it on the website. It is a good report.
I think so.
Yeah, I do too. They can find the report at natureconservancy.ca /Natural Capital Report 2017. And I just want to thank everyone for tuning in. Enjoy the rest of the day.
Thank you.